We're joined by Kevin Mitnick. He's been called the world's most famous hacker. He's now CEO of Mitnick Security and works as a consultant for governments and major corporations worldwide. Kevin, delight to see you again. We've had you on the broadcast before. You've also had the high distinction of being on the FBI's most wanted because you hacked into 40 major firms. In your opinion, give us your sense. Is this a big deal or not that big a deal? Is it just an embarrassment? Is it cyber vandalism? How do you view it?
I think it's a prank. I mean, because if this group or whoever's behind the attack, which we don't even know what group is behind the attack, if they were into Centcom, they wouldn't be revealing it on Twitter. So it sounds like these attackers simply got access to these social media accounts. I'm interested how, because they not only hacked their Twitter account, but also their YouTube account. And they posted this information. And the information turned out to be public, nothing that was considered classified. What this does tell me, though, is that Centcom did not use two-factor authentication. If you're a Twitter user and you want to protect yourself against getting hacked in case somebody's able to get your password, you could set up two-factor authentication. So before you log in, Twitter will text you a code, and you need this code along with your password actually to log into the system.
Which one's more significant to you, the Twitter account or the YouTube? Because you brought both up.
I think the Twitter account, because it allowed these actors to actually get a lot more publicity. It would have been a lot harder with YouTube, but a lot of people watch Twitter accounts. And it's still unknown how they got the credentials. They could have guessed the password, the simplest thing, or they could have used more sophisticated type of attacks. But I really don't think this is the real deal. This is significantly different than the attack on Sony. And I think the attack on Sony is bringing out a lot of copycats, people that want to hack into stuff and get into the news because Sony, is pretty much a recent occurrence.
How vulnerable do you think the government is, the U.S. government, the military, when it comes to cybersecurity?
Well, when I read about their reports about how well they did on security testing, you hear about reports like they obtained a D or an F. So I think that government computers, just like computers that are run in corporations, are vulnerable to attackers. Our critical infrastructure, companies like Sony, mom and pop type of businesses, and also the government. In many cases, the bad guy that's doing the attack only has to send what they call a spear phishing email. So what this is somebody inside the government receives an email from somebody that they trust because they believe that the other person's maybe a colleague or with another division or department. And then there's some attachment or there's a link in the email. And as soon as that person opens up the attachment or clicks on that link, it could exploit a vulnerability in that person's computer. So now the hacker can take over that computer. And that's usually the easiest way in and the hardest to defend against.
Well, you mentioned Sony, of course, the U.S. government. I guess there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there, and this is one of those issues, and you're in this field, so you talk to me about this, but it seems like one of these things that people don't really spend a lot of time or energy or money on this until it becomes an issue. Is that the problem?
Well, a lot of it is reactive. So businesses do not bother to spend the money until something bad happens. They only do what's required, usually by regulation. For example, if you're the type of business that processes credit cards, for example, you have to be what they call PCI compliant. So they have to go through this checklist of conditions to get this certification. So they'll do that, but they won't go through the extra efforts of really going through a process to make sure their infrastructure is secure until something bad happens, until they're broken into or their website's defaced or an employee inside the company gets access to information they shouldn't have.
Kevin Mitnick live for us in Los Angeles. I suspect this issue is not going away, so we will probably see you again in the near future, I suspect.